The roach isn't a very big fish. It isn't in any way a dramatic sort of fish. It's quite a modest fish, going its way, mostly close to the bottom, finding its food there. Its silvery scales reflect its surroundings, helping to camouflage it. And that's as well because it's a timid, inoffensive hunted fish, hunted by such enemies as the pike. That may be a reason for its always swimming in shows. And it's also the reason why the roach is such a shy, subtle fish, hard to catch when it's grown big and experienced. Small roach can be easy enough to catch. There are a great many waters, small farm ponds, canals, many such places that swarm with little roach that are very innocent, give themselves up very easily, and there's many a fishing career has been started when a small boy has gone there with his primitive tackle and his worm and has caught these little fish easily enough. Little fish, but enough to thrill him and make him a lifelong angler. There are more roach under a pound than over. In fact, I'd say that a majority of fishermen hardly ever see a half-pound roach. But for all of them, there's an impassioned lifelong quest to catch a roach that weighs 2 pounds. For most of them, it's never realized. Because the roach is a small fish, not a very strong fish, the tackle for it doesn't need to be strong. And this is a great advantage, because if there's to be much chance of catching a roach, this very shy, cautious fish, tackle needs to be light to overcome the fish's suspicions. At least that's so in the majority of cases. There are waters where the roach are not much fished for, where the tackle may be relatively coarse, lettered on the bottom perhaps with a lobworm, but this is most untypical. Now, what tackle to use for these roach? Well, here's the rod, 12 feet long, with a fair amount of action, because that action absorbs the shock on the fine line which must be used. The line, most typically, 2 pounds breaking strain, very fine. There are waters where it can be quite a lot heavier, where there's a heavy current, but there it's not the strength of the fish which is dictating the strength of the line, it's the weight of the current. Now, with that line, quite a small float, to carry, say, 3 BB shot, and the hook, well, the hook is quite small, a number 12. You see, we should be using small baits, and that gives us the chance to use this quite small hook, and so keep everything in the same scale of lightness, fineness, as small as we can get it with safety, so as not to go against the shyness and caution of these roach. Now, where to go for roach? Well, there are a few better roach rivers than the Kennet in the southern English county of Berkshire. And here we are on the Kennet on a day early in the year, a crisp, still morning with no sounds but those of birds and water. The tranquil stretches that run between the rushy banks offer, as well as lovely scenery, good sport to the quiet roach fisherman. I'm looking for one of those nice, roachy-looking glides that are so exciting to the angler. Bearing in mind the timidity of the roach and the need not to upset the show, I settle down very quietly and cautiously. I think I found a good swim. A nice gliding swim down to the inside bend on the bank. Bound to be roach there. It's got a nice gravel bottom with plenty of weed growth on either side, just what roach like. To get the roach ready to take my bait, I must use the right ground bait. This is soaked and mash bread dried off with meal. I squeeze up a small ball of it so that it sinks, and breaks up nice and small on the bottom so that it will trickle down through the swim. Now what bait? Bread crust takes an awful lot of beating for big roach. There are other baits which do well for roach, like maggots, worms, bread flake, but we'll use crust. Now I cast to the top of the swim. The float cocks prettily, just the tip showing. I've guessed the depth of 6 feet. The float's dragging under. It's snagging the bottom. Needs to be set down a bit, I think. That's right. Now the bait will be just tripping the bottom. Now we must watch that float like a hawk. Roach bites are sometimes very subtle. See, I'm very careful not to jerk the float, letting it swim down freely, naturally, and I must keep closely in touch with it. No loose line between rod and float. When the current puts a belly in the line, I must get it out, or I might miss a bite if it comes. The end of the swim, and judging by the rumpling of the surface, the gravel banks up there. Fish often wait in such places. So I clamp my finger on the reel, the float halts, and the bait rides up from the bottom and wavers. That often brings a bite. Not this time. Bring the tackle back and try another swim down.